Hi guys, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Eufaula Arts Talks, where every Tuesday at 1 o'clock we interview a local artist. And I have a real treat for you today, but before that, of course, we have to have our quick little commercials. As you know, on Halloween night we were planning on having a children's play. It looks like we may be postponing that to a later date, possibly in the early spring, so just keep that in your minds. And we'll have more information on that later. But again, I want to introduce myself. I'm Selina Jayne Dornan, the host of Artalks and a board member of the Eufaula Area Arts. And we want you to be a part of us as well. So if you're interested in becoming a member or serving on the board, you can contact us through Facebook right here. And we do this live every Tuesday. You never know what's going to happen or what we're going to talk about or what's going to be said or what mistakes we make, like saying the wrong street or whatever. But, it's live. It is fun. So anyway, today I want to introduce you to a very special guest whom we had planned on having earlier on the series. But we finally got him today, and if you see behind me all this wonderful, I'm going to scoot over, see all this wonderful pottery, that's just an example of what we're going to be talking about today. And this is a fellow Eufaulan. He has been awarded for a lot of his work, and I love his work. I have to say I don't own a piece, but I have been eyeing several and cannot make up my mind. But he has been in several of our art walks, art shows, and a big supporter of the arts and a big supporter of the Eufaula Area Arts. And we appreciate him being here today. And let me introduce you to a wonderful potter and alchemist. Now that's a word I just learned today. So we'll talk about that. And let me switch this camera around. And hey, Bob Carter, how are you?
Glad to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here today.
I'm virus free. And,
yay!
Everything's good, especially the weather.
Yes, it is beautiful weather. Hey, Bob, talking about the virus, I mean, one of the reasons that we started this whole series was because so many of our local artists were affected by it.
Exactly.
How did it affect you?
No sales.
No sales.
Gallery in Chakotah basically shut down till March, I think. We had 4 or 5 of us had a lot of work there. Spring art shows that, for example, the Butterfly Festival in Muskogee.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful show. The art walk here. We have grandsons in Dallas, and their parents have been so protective through this whole CODA thing.
Yeah.
I probably should have applied for one of those poor boy loans for business. That didn't happen, but this spring and summer is just, except for the good old area arts. There have been pieces sold here, which they're the only places showing right now.
Right,
So,
and we had to shut down a lot.
Yeah.
We were down. The studio was closed for a while, and then we kind of slowly started opening up. And then, of course, we just had our grand opening, and so we're back to our regular hours. So we're excited because we want to help our artists. That's what
I owe so much to the Area Arts Council. It is when we moved here in 2007. Moved from Liberal, Kansas. I was in the oil field chemical business here in Eufaula. And I worked everywhere, almost to Little Rock and clear out to Sweetwater, Texas, and Oklahoma. Anyway, I retired about 7 or 8 years ago. And before I retired, I started getting interested in pottery again.
Yeah.
And I went to an Arts Council meeting at the library. What were those? I can't remember. Was it the group, the driving group, and met Glenna, and got to visiting, and Glenna said, I think I know somebody. Glenna was teaching part-time at Enterprise? No.
Clinton?
Quentin, yes. And she said, I know somebody that you might know, Paul Frame from Seminole. I said, oh my God, I've known Paul Frame since '72. He was a graduate of Wichita State, MFA, under, well, I've forgotten the chairman of the program then, but I was teaching high school in Liberal, and Paul is a rare street rodder potter. You don't find many street rodder potters, but he's an excellent potter. We're good friends. Glenna kind of got us reunited, and we've been good friends ever since then. But I started getting back into pottery, firing, and I'd take it to McAllister, to Yusef's. He was a Nigerian potter from lived in McAllister, and he would fire it for me. Well, as time went on, we built my own kiln. I say we, it was a neighborhood project. One of my neighbors down the road did a lot of the welding on it. My brother-in-law that's gone now helped me start the initial foundation, and it's huge. I wish we had a way to flash pictures of it, because it's the chamber, 36 inches wide, 24 inches deep, and 5+ feet tall.
Wow.
So I've only fired about 2 or 3 times a year. Anyway, became kind of self-sufficient, and got to know Paul again, and we talk probably 2 or 3 times a week. And Eufaula has just been, when everybody could get out and about, it's been great.
Well, so when you were a child, were you interested in pottery then?
No.
No. So it was something you developed as.
I went to high school at Hobart in southwest Oklahoma. My mother went to college at Chickasha, which was Oklahoma Women's College, OCW, Oklahoma College for Women at that time. And she was, I don't know, some kind of clothing design. I remember drawings, and she was the one that really encouraged me.
Yeah.
Went to Southwestern State at Weatherford twice, once in 2-dimensional commercial art, painting and drawing, and then I went to school in Old Mexico one summer, Instituto Allende, and it was there that I seriously worked on a kick wheel.
Right.
For the first time. That was in '65. Then I spent some time in the service. Fortunately, I was Korea, Japan. Got to go to some wonderful museums there.
Wow.
And art galleries. And that kind of set me up for Doug Huber, who's a retired physician's assistant that was with the Longtown, what was the name of it? It was, well, he had a lot of senior citizen patients, so he was excellent in heading stuff off. We got to know each other, and he's a collector of Asian art.
Wow.
So I just stopped in to visit with Doug, and the receptionist there would just run me off, said, no, he's got too many patients, you can't stop and visit. Anyway, it's just continued. I mix all my glaze.
So hence, that's why it's called why you're called an alchemist?
Pardon me?
And why you're called an alchemist?
Well, that's something that Glenna came up with.
Yeah. I was saying, what is that?
Well, and
hey, Glenn is good with titles.
It's real chemistry. And my experience, my graduate program, I went to graduate school in studio ceramics at Emporia State in Kansas. And I was blessed I taught high school in Kansas, high school art, painting, pottery, watercolor, drawing. And then I brought some other people in to work with me. Also, there were 2 teachers. But I quit in '80. So I worked those 10 years when the arts were really supported in the public schools.
Yes.
They're just, the doctors, the lawyers would encourage their kids to take an art class. And these were often honor roll, good students. Little story about teaching school. I'd been there 2 or 3 years and developed a reputation of being kind of strict, because I'd always explain, we're here to learn. I don't want you disrupting a class, because if I have to take 5 minutes to deal with you, 20 people lose 5. So that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, if it turns out that you've made an error in your class choice, I'll be glad to go with you to the counselor's office and find you someplace where you'll be happier. Well, I had great students, and some of it came from these 4 or 5 honor roll kids were seniors, and that was back in the day that often at the end of first semester, seniors had all the credits they needed to graduate. And they said, well, we really wanted to take your class, but we'd heard you were pretty tough. I said, hey, you're honor roll people. That tells me 2 things: that you listen, that you pay attention, that you want to learn. I said, don't worry, you'll have a great time. And we did. I'd have, by the time my last year or 2 there, I'd gotten the principals to approve 2-hour pottery class, because there was cleanup, set up and this and that, and they got 1 full credit each semester. Oh. So it was a little hard for scheduling for some of them, but probably the last year or 2 I'd have 15 to 20 in 2 classes, and they'd go through 8,000 or 10,000 pounds of clay a year.
Wow. So what would you say is the thing that really just made you say, I want to do pottery?
Well, there was kind of accidental results. When I was an undergraduate, Philbrook had a competition that was for Oklahoma artists. And I sent a little raku piece, just a little green 3-legged thing, and received an honorable mention. I still have that sitting in my studio. And the honor was the first and second was Corso. He was the head of the ceramics department at OU. And Monty Hoke, a very well-known pottery. Well, he was actually a wrestling coach, potter, and they're rare birds. But he did beautiful work, and I was honorable mention behind them, and I was just elated.
Oh, wow. Well, you could have went any direction. It sounds like you had a lot of different experience in art itself, and you chose to
pottery is addictive. And I tell a lot of people the reason I sell pottery now is to support my habit.
There you go. So how many years now altogether have you been doing pottery?
Well, I started, like I say, the first serious on a wooden kick wheel in Old Mexico in 1965.
Wow.
And I've been doing it
several
off
years.
and on. And my life has been 90-degree turns. I was an air-to-air missile specialist in the Air Force, which gave me a chance to go to Korea and Japan.
So you got to see a lot of different.
I did.
Yeah, different forms, different whatever in even in pottery itself. And it's very diverse. I mean, it's not.
Oh, it is.
Everyone has a different style, has a different, things that make it their own, be it color or.
And I was so blessed to grow up in that period. I'd go to the National NCEC, a National Ceramic Educators Conference, and that's really where I got to know Paul, because I'd go to Wichita, we'd load up in some station wagons and went to Baton Rouge one year and got way out of hand, but had a good time. But people like Paul Solner, which Paul Solner, the people that don't know, was the father of American raku. Raku is a process, low temperature process, taking a piece out of the kiln, putting it in a combustible, burning the clay body, it'll burn black, soaks up the carbon. Anyway, Paul Solner was there with all his groupies. One year, Michael Cardew from France. Michael is known worldwide. Most of his work was in Africa, teaching African tribes how to produce enough to market their pottery. I'm just blessed to be with that period.
Right.
Rick St. John was at Wichita State. Rick was a fabulous potter and had 8 or 10 graduate students under him that were just exceptional people. I was lucky. I was in the right place, the right time.
Right. So do you think being able to see all these different areas and their styles and the people that you have been acquainted with, did that help you to create your style?
It did.
It did.
It did. Probably the most impact was at Kansas State under Angelo Garzio. And Ange was Italian, little short, my way or the highway. We were at war most of the time, but he was absolutely an incredible functional potter. I still have a large bean pot, he called it, of his. And I was teaching school. I didn't have a lot of money for things like that, but $25 in the 70s.
Yeah.
You'd pay your electric bill and probably your water bill. But functional pottery, and I've made everything at one time or another. I've made decorative pieces that go in the yard.
So is that what you call yours, basically functional pottery?
Functional, yes.
Okay.
Even though I like to push the functional possibilities, maybe to extreme in some cases, where there's some question as to do they function? Yeah, and I refer to those pieces as art.
There you go.
So I do. I make ceramic horns, and that came from. I'd read in some Ceramics Monthly or somewhere, and I had my students make an instrument.
Oh.
Well, the easy way out, some people made drums, just an open vase and stretched leather over the top.
Yeah.
Some tried making stringed instruments, which they're pretty cool looking, but they weren't our people that could play guitar or something that never worked out. But I started, one summer at graduate school at Kansas State, I had a basement apartment under Bob Fromey. Bob lived in the upstairs apartment. He was a graduate student at Kansas State and went from there. He's a Vietnam vet, Went from there to San Antonio to run the art center there.
Oh.
But Bob was interested in English chimney whistles. They're little, often bird shaped, kind of like ocarinas, and they would hang in the chimneys. So when the fire was going and the draft was there, they'd make these sounds.
Oh, wow.
And it was constant. I think it'd become pretty irritating, but Bob taught me how to make chimneys. And that's where some of the alchemy stuff comes from.
Ah.
One of my students that just retired from teaching art in Hammond, Oklahoma, talked about the magic sticks. That you had to have a magic stick to, when you were building your whistle, to get it to work. And apparently Tom had struggled and struggled and was having trouble. And I said, here, you can use one of my magic sticks. Well, and it whistles, so it was magic. And you know, clay, it leads you to different places. When I interviewed for my first job in oil field chemicals, I had little or no idea where the oil field even was. I knew it was outside of town somewhere, but I had enough thermal chemistry, feldspars and bentonite and blah, blah, blah. And from art shows, I'd learned to talk to people. Now, often I talked too much and they didn't talk enough, but that's also my nature. But it gave me enough background to get a job in the chemical business that I was in and out of for 20, 25 years.
Wow.
And,
so that's interesting that your art would also take you to a profession. And that's kind of the cool thing.
Good word, profession. After I quit teaching, I ran and was elected to the school board and served 2 terms, 8 years. Before that, when I was teaching, I learned a little politics. We'd do a presentation for the school board. We'd cover the awards that our students had won. We covered the people the year before that had gotten scholarships, because we sent scholarships, West Texas State, Emporia. I don't know if we sent any to Kansas State or not, but and many of those people went on to become teachers also. But we put on a good show for the school board, and at that time, that kept our budget functioning. And we worked hard. We spent a lot of time. I took an old wheat truck to Denver and bought 10 or 15,000 pounds of clay at a time.
Wow.
So we always used wet clay, and I didn't want to pay somebody to haul water from Denver to Liberal, Kansas. So I learned, that was another thing. We built my first kiln, big kiln, the students and I at Liberal High School. We learned together a lot.
Yeah.
And I blew the top out of it twice. And that'll make your principal and the superintendent of schools pretty nervous. So
what is your thoughts on the fact that there's just really hardly any arts in the school anymore?
Thank God for places like this. You know, back in the day, if you had to take a job at a parochial school, church school of one kind or another, you maybe weren't that good a teacher. You know, if you were that good a student when you're going through art education, you got some high schools that were interested in you. And, for example, when I went to Liberal, Kansas, jobs were getting hard to find because people were coming back from Vietnam. Men, women, you know, nurses, Army, whatever. I was just lucky. I was in the right place at the right time. My first principal was a man that treated every teacher with respect as if they were trained to do what they were doing.
Right.
And we got along just fabulous.
That's
Then I had
awesome.
another principal, he was an ex-Marine. He'd been in Pearl Harbor, had 2 ships blown up. He jumped overboard, swam to another ship, Japanese blew it up. He said, you know, I don't always know what you're doing, and I don't want to know what you're doing, but you're doing a great job. So we got
It
along.
sounds like you have tons of stories, but we're about to run out of time. Yeah. So before we do, I just kind of want to recap a little bit about pottery. Because there may be people out there that are interested in pottery and have no clue. I'm probably one of them, have no clue. So tell me as quickly as you can, like some of the steps of pottery.
Unfortunately, this is all high temperature pottery. They're what is normally considered ceramics is lower temperature. Most of the glazing is done with a brush. This is high temperature, and all of these pieces are thrown on a potter's wheel. Oh. It's the equipment, the expense of the equipment that makes
clay
it hard.
is considered ceramic. See, I know
It's
nothing.
what?
I know nothing about pottery. So when they say ceramic, is that clay?
Ceramics is clay, but it's usually mold made, cast, and
okay. So these you're creating them by hand on a wheel.
exactly.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, we need to film you doing that. I think, Glenna, we're going to put that on our list of things to do.
Give me 2 weeks or a month to clean up my studio enough for.
I think that would be very interesting.
In the magazine, what was that magazine? Southwest. There used to be a copy around here too.
Right. Yeah, they did an article on you in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll dig that up. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up a little bit.
Okay.
I do want to ask you the one question that I like to ask all my artists, and that is, what is art to you?
It's been a joy and a challenge. Although where I work is very solitary. We go to Florida in the winter sometimes, and there I work in larger groups, really enjoy the interaction. I don't know, it's something I succeeded at when there was very few other things at time to time that I was interested enough to become proficient. And people have bought my work and it's going everywhere. My students have bought work. It's a great thing to do. And it's a wonderful life, whether you do it as a hobby or whether you do it as a professional, or in my case, if you do it to support your habit.
Yeah, that's a good. A lot of artists do that.
Yeah.
Because they just love what they're doing, and I think that's what.
And with a good potter's wheel, even a used one, will be $250. A wheel, for example, $250. The ones I have, one of them was $350. It was used. The other one was $900. It was new. I just bought my first electric kiln in my life, if you can believe that. State of Kansas helped me out quite a little bit, but it was $4,000. Wow. So it takes a lot of $25 coffee cups
to support your habit.
Yeah.
Well, you have some beautiful pieces, and we just want everybody to know that we have them down here at the Main Street. I always want to say salon. I don't know why. Studio. We're not a hair salon. It's a studio, and we have a lot of different art down here. But we have some beautiful pieces down here from Bob, and I would just encourage everybody to come down and take a look. And Bob, you have so many stories. I know you have many, many more to share, but we kind of run out of time here. We don't want to go too long.
Some of them are not for air.
But we appreciate you being here today. Any last words for maybe some aspiring people that are interested in pottery?
Well, maybe we'd find somebody that owns a building, that has a fireproof area that wants to provide it to the Area Arts Council. So we could handle easily twice as much show space.
Yeah.
That again, for painting, printmaking, silkscreen.
Yeah.
There's
that would be nice.
I did a lot of printmaking, lithography, and woodcut in Florida and Old Mexico. People will come.
Yeah. So if there's any philanthropists out there that would like to donate us a large area, we are open to it.
With a reasonably fireproof area for kills.
There you go. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being here. We're glad that you're healthy and out and about again.
Well,
and
I don't know about healthy. The older you get, the smaller your pieces get.
Oh, so. Well, we're looking forward to see what you come up with, what new pieces you come up with. And we have been showing some of your work. I think Glenn has been filming some of it. But we'll put some more on there. And thank you again. Any last words?
Pardon me?
Any last words?
Oh my, I always have last words that go on forever.
Okay. Well, thank you, and regards to your sweet wife, and hopefully we'll see you again at an art show.
Thanks for the Area Arts Council for having me here.
You bet.
They've treated me far better than I deserve most of the time. Thank you.
All right, and thanks to everybody for joining us today. We'll see you next week.